Senate Democrats tried to revive the failed bipartisan border deal. As a reminder, Republicans voted against the bill back in February after Trump came out against it. The legislation was designed in part to reduce border crossings, raise the bar for migrants to qualify for asylum, and quickly turn away those who don't meet the standard. The bill remained unchanged from its earlier version.
In other border news, in Virginia this week, a 21-year-old immigrant who has previously been deported was charged with the rape of a minor, according to Campbell County Sheriff's Office. Here to discuss it all is the Chief of Intelligence and Research and the Director for Texas Identity at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, Joshua Treviño. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I was just at a small farm. It's actually 8 acres, so it's a big farm for standards here in North Carolina. It's a nursery. They have fruit trees. I was there to pick up some, and I heard that they were struggling to find work. And the owner of the farm said to me, I heard there's 85,000 migrants coming over the border. None of them are here. We need work, but we don't have workers for it. Is there a policy solution here that finds a place for these migrants, in the economy in the U.S.?
Look, it used to be, and I guess to set the stage, I'm a native of South Texas, and so I'm very familiar with how migration, illegal and otherwise, has come and gone over the past several decades. It's fair to say that for most of my life, I'm near 50, that migration has been really fundamentally a labor market issue. That's not really the case anymore. What we see now coming over the southern border is fundamentally a human trafficking issue, with all the migration 100% controlled by extraordinarily brutal cartels that take these individuals, traffic them through Latin America, Mexico, across the border, but then continue to traffic them into the United States. And the toll that's taken on them, we have to look at them as victims as much as anything, is horrendous. Part of the reason that these illegals are not going to places like the orchard, the farm that you were at, is because they typically have jobs lined up via the cartel networks within the United States. And the reason for that is that the cartels, the trafficking cartels, continue to extract profit from them via remittances for the most part once they're in these controlled jobs. So there really isn't a policy solution that's going to get individuals who are fundamentally in the control of trafficking organizations and enter them into the free market. And that's, of course, setting aside the question of legality or whether they ought to be here and compete with American workers and so on. Fundamental to any policy solution, first and foremost, before you talk about labor market integration, before you talk about adjudication of populations here, is you got to shut down the trafficking flow. And that, unfortunately, means, I say this with regret as a South Texan, closing the border.
Yeah, so let's get into this bill that was brought back up by the Senate Democrats, because this has been claimed to be the solution for this massive influx of illegal migrants who have been coming across during the Biden administration. It was already shot down once before by Republicans who said this isn't really going to fix anything. If anything, it'll actually codify the problem into place. It seems obvious to me that the Democrats are just trying to use this as a campaign issue by claiming that Republicans don't actually want to fix the border. But can you just walk through a little bit about what the fundamental problems are in this bill and why I think any reasonable person who wants to fix this issue would vote against it?
Yeah, I remember when the text of this bill was first released, I believe it was on the evening of February 5th earlier this year. You can correct me on the exact date, but I was in Mexico. I was actually in Mexico City meeting with policymakers there and had to talk via Zoom to the Border Security Caucus the next day, and ended up staying up till about 1 or 2 in the morning reading through, I think it was something like 370 pages of this bill. And it was shocking to me that it had ever made it into public view, and it was real evidence of kind of this almost bipartisan in some ways disconnect on the issue of migration. I mean, the bill itself really achieves nothing more than codifying some of the worst features of the immigration system. It gives work permits to illegals almost immediately in many cases. It actually effectively institutionalizes a huge flow of illegals into the country. There's even like these bizarre provisions buried in there that essentially establish slush funds to be given to Mexican officials, basically basically to conduct a form of executive bribery of them, which they'd like quite a bit in order to putatively control migration flows that are already under the control of their allied cartels. So at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, we opposed it. We were glad to see that the House Republicans effectively killed it. Obviously, the Senate vote on it there is not going to change anything. It's a signaling mechanism. But here's the thing to understand is that the President of the United States presently has all the executive authority he needs on a variety of fronts to secure the border. He chooses not to. And we can speculate on why that is. I think core to it is this ideological belief, and it is fundamentally ideological on the left, that there is no such thing as an unvirtuous migration, even if it's controlled by human traffickers. I prefer to refer to an earlier American political tradition that holds to the belief that there should be no commerce in man. And that's as applicable in the 21st century as it was in the 19th.
So the big number that I care about, a lot of policy makers and policy analysts care about, is net migration. From 2013 to 2018, the figure seems to be over 800,000 migrants cross the border, but we also had around 700,000 cross back. And so that would bring our net migration number to an estimated 160,000. The folks at the Mexican Migration Project collect a lot of these numbers. What numbers are you relying on for net migration? Because I think that's the number a lot of Americans care about, not just the amount of migrants coming in, but also those leaving, who's remaining. That seems to be the number I care about. Where are you getting that figure?
I apologize for speaking over you there. Look, the data on this is, if anything, a tremendous undercount. And anybody, including me, who tells you that they have the hard numbers is peddling a falsehood. No one does, and that's part of the problem. What we know is that there are reports of there's various categories. There's known apprehensions. I mean, set aside the legal immigration flows of illegals. You've got known apprehensions. You have what's called gotaways, which are individuals who are known to have crossed, but they're not apprehended by any manner of law enforcement, whether state or federal. And then you get into what I would describe as the informed speculation realm, which is if you've got the folks that you catch and you've got the folks that get away, how many are you not seeing? And so in talking with a variety of individuals within the migration, the law enforcement, even the military apparatus down here in Texas, what you get is a variety of rule of thumbs, and it varies wildly. I don't want to obscure that fact. I've heard say that you miss 4 for every 1 that you get, which means that you're only apprehending about 20%. I've heard that you miss about half of those that you get. I think a good ballpark is probably that you run into either as a gotaway or somebody apprehended about 1/3 of who's there. So if you run with that, what you end up with are terrifically huge figures, numbering in the millions. As far as the net migration numbers go, the outflows versus the inflows, this we think it is representative only of a segment of migrants. It used to be, going back 25 years or more, that most of the migration from Mexico in particular, but also from Latin America in general, was in fact cyclical, that you would have individuals who would come and they would work, and they would return to from whence they came, either on a seasonal or a permanent basis once they'd made the money that they wanted to. We really aren't seeing that anymore. When you talk about the populations that are coming across the border now, particularly those who will claim asylee status, for example, like the Venezuelans, a lot of the Africans who come over, these are folks who don't have a plausible path back and clearly don't intend to do it. And as a rule of thumb, if you see a family coming, that family is here to stay. So I can't give you hard numbers, but that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is that the numbers don't exist. But what we see is you see the effects, and we know that the numbers are tremendous. The illegal population of the United States is very plausibly in the tens of millions, and for us that is an existential issue as a nation, in my view.
So recently we've seen some of the illegal crossings under the Biden administration go down, and that can be credited to the Mexican government enforcing its southern border. Why is it not a good idea for the United States to be relying on Mexico for border enforcement?
You can't rely on Mexico for border enforcement because the sad reality is that the Mexican government, I want to be very clear on this, I don't mean the Mexican people, the nation of Mexico. I am half Mexican. I'm proud to be half Mexican. But the reality is that the Mexican government is hand in glove with its own criminal cartels, and it has been for some time. The current Mexican regime under President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has a very robust and frankly public relationship with the Sinaloa cartel. And so what we've seen with the decline in illegal crossings in the past several weeks, few months, is a choice that's been made by the Mexican side. We believe, and we've spoken publicly about this at the foundation, that there is a deal between the Biden administration and the López Obrador regime in Mexico to artificially suppress these crossings, these trafficking crossings, for the duration of the election year. Because obviously the Mexicans would prefer to have Biden remain in office. He's given them almost everything that they want. And so, ultimately, outsourcing core American priorities, core American values, core American roles of government to a foreign power that is an antagonist of ours, again, I say this with regret, but it's just reality, is a bad idea. The United States possesses the power and the right to do everything it needs to do on the border without reference to the cooperation or the desires of the Mexican state. That cooperation is welcome, but it's not necessary, and to outsource it in a way that gives them a veto over what it is that we do and what we experience is a terrifically bad idea.
So foreign-born workers accounted for about half of labor market growth in 2023. Economists saw huge growth. A lot of them are crediting this, to big fiscal policy and the big influx of migrants. If most of the migrant labor is happening in, the unofficial sector, they're working for cartels, we're not seeing them working in the formal economy, how would we see such a large amount of growth credited to the foreign-born workers coming to the U.S.?
Well, again, I can't speak to the difference between the licit and the illicit economy, or the illicit and illicit market in this particular case. I think my riposte to something like that would be, and again, we as conservatives are fundamentally pro-market, right? Like, we're pro-market, we're pro-migrant, we're pro-immigrant in the sense that we believe everybody deserves human dignity and we like economic growth and so on. But there's an underlying question to it, which is what is the nation? Is the nation fundamentally an economy with a people attached to it? Is it fundamentally a tax farm? And if it is, then that yields one set of answers. That leads one set of policy conclusions. It doesn't really matter who's here. But if the nation is something else, if the republic, if America is expressive of a particular set of values and a particular history, then it becomes very important to understand that we must prioritize that, not at the expense necessarily of economic growth, but in counterpoise to it. So for me, and I may be reading something into your question that is implicit rather than explicit, but I don't think the economic figures are the final word in this. We're not aiming for growth as such. We love growth. We're aiming for the defense of the republic, which I think is a surpassing value.
All right, Joshua Treviño, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to take a break. Be back with more Rising after this.